Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on how technology is transforming the customer and advisor experience in wealth management. It's been organised by Ditto, the marketing, business development and communications company based here in London and Dublin, and CoMark, one of the leading software houses in Europe, based in Krakow, Poland. Today's event is the first in a mini-series of 3 webinars on the digitalisation of wealth management. My name is Michael Imson. I'm a senior content editor at Financial Times Live, which is the FT's conference division. And I'm also a chartered member of the UK's Chartered Institute for Securities and Investment, CISI, and the Deputy Chairman of the CISI's FinTech Professional Forum. And joining me here today for this discussion are 4 experts on the digitalisation trends taking place in wealth management and private banking. We have Maureen Spare, who's the US Director of Consulting Services, Sales and Delivery in the Capital Markets Wealth and Asset Management Division at JDX Consulting. Maureen is based in New York. Next, we have Anu Gurn, who's Head of Financial Planning and Advice, Private Banking Services at Coutts, which is part of the Royal Bank of Scotland Group, and he's based in London. Then we have Greg Malone, Head of Wealth Management at Signia Wealth, a London Wealth Manager. And finally, Anna Sasha, who's Business Solution Manager for CoMark. Now, we're here to talk about how wealth management and private banking is becoming increasingly digitalised, with more clients interacting with their wealth managers and private bankers through online channels, especially mobile. Some firms have gone further down this path than others, but around the world, in emerging and as well as in established markets, there's a race to go digital and provide a truly seamless client experience. And going digital is also about improving the advisor's experience. A well-trained, willing and technologically enabled advisor workforce is essential for the provision of high-quality client service. Now, the format of this webinar is quite simple. First, I'll ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves and tell us about their job roles. Then I'll ask them a few key questions. And the listeners, you'll be able to ask questions too via the webinar site, so please do send some in, and I'll try to get them answered near the end. There's a section on the site, on the webinar website, which explains how to send in questions. And then finally, we'll wrap up with some concluding remarks. So let's get started. First of all, Maureen of JDX. Maureen, can you tell us about yourself and your job and your interest in the topic of this webinar?
Sure, Mike, thanks very much. I'm really happy to be here today with this interesting panel that you've put together and to discuss a really great topic. I work for JDX Consulting, which is a global consulting firm with over 700 consultants with offices in the UK, US, Dublin, and Singapore. We've recently been recognized as one of the UK's fastest growing firms by a number of publications. Our primary focus is to provide consultancy and business services to the banking and financial services clients, intermediaries, and fintechs. I head the consulting services in the US for asset and wealth. I've been in this space for over 25 years, working in both technology and technology and operations for wealth management. And I've led a number of digital transformation projects to optimize operations, reduce costs, and most importantly to today's topic, customer experience. Apologize in advance, I'm fighting a bit of a cold, so I'll try not to be a bit distracting as we go through the session.
That's okay, Maureen. Yes, I did talk to you last week, and that cold's proving difficult to shake off. Anu Gurn of Coutts, can you tell us about your role at Coutts and your interest in this subject?
Sure, of course, thank you. So at Coutts, I head up our financial planning and advice team within private banking services. Effectively, that means my team and I deliver change projects across Coutts in the wealth management division. And those change projects span across kind of all IT and digital related activities. Coutts is part of the Royal Bank of Scotland Group, which means as well as looking after our core wealth management business within the Coutts Private Bank, my team and I have accountability for delivering across the RBS group, with Coutts acting as a centre of excellence for investments and advice. So things like our automated advice proposition, which is offered to NatWest and RBS customers, would be in some part delivered through me and my team. I guess my interest in this subject, comes from many angles. I think the most interesting thing about going digital, as you put it, within wealth management, is that I don't see it really as going digital. I see it as going omni-channel. Unlike in retail banks, where the onus has been to entirely digitize the end-to-end client experience and effectively try to take away as much of the human element as possible. I think within our industry, the human element will always be central to what it is we do. That's not going anywhere. So, I think the mission for wealth managers and private banks is to effectively think about how technology and digital can augment the human interaction as opposed to replace it. So keen to hear what others have to think on that subject.
Thanks, Anu. Yeah, the human touch is very important. And I was talking to Greg Malone of Signia Wealth about this a few days ago, and he sort of echoes your thoughts on that. So, Greg from Signia, please tell us about your role and your view on this subject.
Hi, Mike. Thanks very much. So I'm Greg Malone. I'm the head of wealth management at Signia, which is a London-based private investment office. I actually founded a business a number of years ago called Squared Investments, which was a co-investment platform for a number of successful families to invest alongside one another. And we then merged that with Signia in 2015. And I now sit on the management committee, as well as taking responsibility for all interactions with our families. So we are, as a business now, we're responsible for managing the wealth of a relatively small number of very successful international family offices. And to answer your point, Mike, on the relevance of technology to us, we are specifically looking at it as a way of enabling a wider base of end user to access what we do for what is currently quite a narrow community in the international family office space.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Greg. And finally, Anna from CoMark. Tell us about CoMark and your role there.
Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon. My name is Anna Sasha, and I represent CoMark, which is a software house. I'm a business solution manager responsible for matching our key product, CoMark Wealth Management, with the needs of our clients. As a company, we specialize in delivering IT solutions for relationship managers and their customers. So today I'll share some views on how we see the process of going digital or going omnichannel in wealth management from the technology perspective.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Well, that's everyone who's done you've all done your introductory remarks. You're all involved in some fascinating work. So let's move on and get right to the heart of the subject. Key opening question really is how are wealth management companies digitalising their client relationship management to improve the experience for both clients and advisors? Are they getting it right? Are they going fast enough? And Anu, I'd like you to answer that question first.
Sure, thank you. So I think you put the emphasis there on client relationship management, which I think is the right thing to do. I think the low-hanging fruit from a digital perspective has been achieved. Those more transactional based interactions that clients have with a private bank or wealth manager have been delivered. Can I see my balances? Can I request a statement or what have you? And I think what the focus is on now is digitizing those more relationship elements. You can think of this, I think, in two parts. You've got the front end and you've got the back end. In some ways, the front end is the easier part. So it's very easy to picture the next stage of digitized client relationship management, recentering around an omni-channel experience where perhaps a client no longer has to pick between a phone call or going in for a face-to-face meeting with an advisor. You can do that via a video conferencing capability, or rather than a paper-based fact find being sent to a client, that can be done over the kitchen table over coffee with an advisor armed with an iPad to capture data in real time and get that into the system, and maybe even offer an entire end-to-end advisory experience in the client's home. I think we've probably seen plenty of demos and videos kind of encapsulating the spirit of that kind of thing. But I think the key part of it is actually the bit which is under the line, which the client doesn't see, which is how do we build the technology platform that we need to make these kinds of experiences possible? And that rests on two parts. First is data. So effectively making sure that if we are going to engage and interact with clients in real time, we have our golden source of client data upon which to call from. And then from a more structural perspective, lots of these elements that we want to start delivering to clients, be it video conferencing, be it banking aggregation, be it cash flow modeling, but in real time in front of those clients require us to build and maintain an API integration layer which sits under the surface, which the client doesn't see. And that's a big change for, I think, lots of private banks and wealth managers. We're used to working with a handful of core underlying platforms which power everything we do. And our IT and digital operations are kind of centered around those. I think now we're having to be much broader in the technology landscape that we are developing, especially with regards to those third-party services. So I really think the main thing which banks are doing now is getting their house in order in terms of the back end, saying, okay, we're going to develop a suite of microservices on our core platforms. We're going to develop these skill sets and capabilities we need to manage an API integration layer. And if you can get that right, I think it then opens up the ability to develop those client and colleague-facing elements that I touched on at the start of the question.
Oh, yeah, it's interesting what you said a minute or two ago about sitting at the kitchen table, the advisor and the client looking at an iPad, because that really does bring all three elements together: the technology for the client, the technology for the advisor, and you've still actually got that personal interaction because they're both in the same room.
Yeah, very much so. I think it kind of does away with the time lag as well. I think if you look at the time taken to do anything in private banking and wealth management, there are lead times of several weeks, and I don't think the client expectation now sits in line with that.
Mm-hmm. Greg, yours is a very different firm, a niche firm. So same question for you. How are you digitalising your client relationship management? And do you think you're moving fast enough, and are you getting it right?
Yeah, Mike, I agree that we come at things from a slightly different angle, in that the relationships we have with our families tend to be fewer than some of the other guys on the call, I think. So the benefits to us as a business, for a second, just setting the client aside, are difficult, or more difficult to quantify in terms of them investing in an infrastructure which will enable us to interact kind of digitally with our clients. For us, the kind of digitalization has been key to accessing a different type of client. So for the last decade, the business has been very good at what we do, but for a very specific type of client. So historically, the clients have been, or our service has been restricted to the family office community, so very significant international families. And what we are now looking at is the rate of pace of technology and change has meant that we are able to now look at potentially, or we are looking at enabling a different end user to access the business and the services that we provide using end-to-end technology.
The different sort of user, you're talking about a different client segment. This is what we were talking about the other day about this new project you've got bubbling under, which you're going to launch next first quarter of next year.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Are you allowed to say what you're calling that yet, or is that name still a project name still under wraps?
Yeah, I mean, I would be allowed to say what we're calling it had we decided, Mike. I think you kind of jumped the gun slightly there. I think the point I think to the point you made slightly earlier. I think there is a real shift, I think, from people looking at, over the last decade. I think there's almost a fear of digitalisation replacing relationships and relationship management. I think the clients and users have been brought on a journey as technology has developed and has enabled service providers to reach a wider audience or provide them a deeper level of service. I'd be interested now to see if that trend continues and people do move to a position where the relationship is completely digitalized end to end, and how that breaks down across different subsectors. So from the kind of mass affluent through high net worth into the space that we operate in.
If I understood you correctly, what you said the other day, your main clients now are these big family offices, but you're going to broaden out to individuals, the mass affluent, and you're using more technology. So you don't use that much technology at the moment with these family offices.
We really don't, and I'm quite happy to say on the webinar that we are way behind, I think.
But to reach the mass affluent market, or on the ones just above that, the individuals, you've got this technology-based solution.
Yeah, we are right at the forefront.
Yeah. Let's move on to Maureen, because as a consultant, you've got sort of an elevated view of this. You can look around the markets you cover, geographical markets you cover, and see how wealth management companies are going through this digitalization process. So what's your view on this?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Wealth management is definitely a highly competitive segment of the market right now, and truly the digital omni experience is becoming more and more of a differentiating factor. On the mass or the retail segment of the wealth management, the self-service features are getting a critical importance because it's not just the customer experience, but they're able to establish a more sustainable cost structure, allowing the self-service of account acquisition, goals-based planning, and some transactional capabilities. Another area that we're seeing some growth in from the wealth managers are also adding additional levels of customization and personalization. And I say that as no longer is it target marketing campaigns or addressing you with your surname, but it really is now underpinned with analytics. And going back to the comment earlier on data, having clean data enables a really robust analytics, and firms are leveraging that to give true point-in-time curated experiences and personalization and personalization based on your interaction patterns, your sentiment, and all that tracking that is done on the Omnichannel. I've also seen some firms start to look into how to integrate chat and video into the web mobile app. So basically, they're kind of combining the customer experience from a more holistic view, so not negating the personal touch, but also having the digital experience. So basically, it is the investor initiating when they want that personal touch. From an advisor perspective, lots of dashboards. Once again, data is enabling that, and it's also giving the advisor transparency now more and more of what's going on in the back office, so they can service their client better. So that transparency is there because the systems are more integrated. They're giving more and more tools, portfolio risk tools. But I mean, all of this is all great, but it really is the pace of change, and that pace of change of all these features needs to be prudent, has to be a targeted strategy. So you go in it with the right mindset, you're addressing your right target segment. What works for the mass wealth market may not be the approach that you want for the high net worth or the ultra high net worth. Going into a project like that, this shouldn't be underestimated. You got to have corporate sponsorship, budget, and you really basically are changing the firm to be from more of a customer service paradigm to a customer experience type firm, and that takes really quite an effort to get it right. And sometimes it can be done in incremental steps. Some firms go for big bang. So what, the pacing is really very individualistic based on the firm. The most important thing, what it comes down to, is when you embark on an effort like this, is that you go through it through a client-centric lens rather than a technology lens. Technology, there's a lot of great tools and products, but it is an enabler, and you really need to go through this effort through the client-centric lens and map that out, and then enable it with the technology.
Thank you, Maureen. Well, let's move on to Anna, because from CoMark, because that final point that Maureen was making, you've got to look at it from a client perspective rather than a technology perspective. CoMark's a technology firm. So in answering this key question here, Anna, could you please bear in mind or tell us how you at all times, because you're a tech company, keep in mind that your clients, the wealth managers or private bankers, have to bear in mind their clients who are people?
Well, first of all, I believe that most, if not all, of wealth management firms are running some projects in the digitalization space. What I personally see is that the market is talking about AI, blockchain, or augmented reality as the future means to improve experience for either customers or advisors. But very often, the actual problems and challenges are much more mundane. So here I especially identify with what Anu said at the very beginning. Before we start aiming high, we should really focus on building a solid foundation for further improvements and innovations. And by saying that, I see two main areas which I find particularly crucial when it comes to improving advisor experience. First is automation of various processes, including administration processes like onboarding, customer assessment, reporting, or staying compliant. While the second thing, what Anu has also mentioned, is the data. So in our opinion, centralization of data is crucial, so that you really give your relationship managers and also your clients access to real-time, aggregated, and centralized data, and not plenty of systems with the data scattered all over. So these are the main two areas which I find especially crucial when it comes to the digitization of the environment of the advisor. But looking from the perspective of the customer, I also believe in the power of integrated approach to customer service. So once you give someone a personal and digital channel, you should also ensure that the channels are both integrated and consistent with each other. Well, simple example, if the advisor presents me with a report at a meeting, I want to see exactly the same report in my investment app. This really sounds like an obvious thing, but very often even such basic features, such basic functionality and service is simply not delivered by financial institutions. And I also want to address your last question, which I probably cannot answer very well, because I think it's not for us to determine if someone goes fast or slow, because this is being constantly verified by the market anyway. So I think it does not really matter how slow the market goes. I think as long as simply doesn't stop and it keeps moving ahead.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any perspective on particular countries where wealth managers are moving faster than others, or geographical regions? So in other words, is Europe more advanced in this respect than, I don't know, Asia, or is Germany at the top of its game and Spain is lagging behind? Can you give us any sort of geographical perspective?
Well, if I had to focus on Europe, definitely Central and the Central and then the Eastern part of the Europe is pioneering in digitization projects. We also focus a lot on Asia because there are many initiatives happening right now in there. So that's I would say I would point out the two regions, so the Central and Eastern Europe plus Asia as the leaders in the digitalization initiatives over the world.
Yeah, the leaders, the pioneers, right? Well, let's move on to the next question, which is this: in a high-touch industry, how do wealth managers strike the right balance between these digital delivery channels on the one hand, and then traditional phone calls and face-to-face meetings on the other? I'd like to ask Maureen to kick off with that one. What's your perspective on this, Maureen?
Yeah, no, I think the balance comes down to the right segment of the wealth management market. Obviously, on the mass retail, it is embracing the omnichannel experience. They still do like to have the human touch, but the difference here is it's based on when they want to reach out for that interaction, which is certainly less frequent. On the flip side of that, the ultra high net worth and the high net worth, I'm seeing a more balanced approach. Definitely, which used to be more face-to-face than phone calls. I'm seeing more and more of the investors mandating some level of self-service on the omni-channel to be able to transact on accounts and, for example, send a child's college or university tuition with a click of a phone, so they don't have to step away from some of their business meetings. But they still want the human interaction of the advisor. So it's important that the self-service in that segment of the wealth management is an optional feature and not forced down the Omni, and that the white glove interaction remains as an option. Certainly in the mass retail side, it really is kind of getting more D2C self-service. For analytics, and I go back again to data and analytics, it really is helping the omni-channel with features of when some of their holdings are downgraded, and even things where it's becoming a more overall holistic portal to them. So it's allowing the advisor to be aware of political events, regional disasters. So they're servicing their client on the portfolio management side, and they're adding things on information. When we have hurricanes and some of those weather disasters here in the States, of making the omni-channel where that you can guide them how to do, FEMA insurance claims, elderly resources and pets and disasters, and even features like family notification. So there's a lot kind of going on. Yeah, I think what it comes down to is the human touch will never go away. It's just making the best moments of those touch points more meaningful, but by leveraging the data. So I do think it will continue to be a balanced approach, and I think it depends on what segment of the market you're going towards.
Yeah, thanks, Maureen. Anu, Maureen just mentioned omnichannels, which is a term you used earlier. So how do you get the right balance with these omnichannels in Coutts?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'll speak kind of more broadly for the industry. I think this comes down to two parts. It's first of all, you need to have a good segment-based proposition within your organization. So if you are going to operate at an ultra high net worth level, but also at the top end of mass affluent level, you have to very clearly go into those clients with a business proposition which says, if you are at a certain level, you have a certain proposition, and this is the way that your touch points will work. So I think you can set the expectation from the beginning with clients coming to your organization with regards to will it be digital, will it be face to face? But in broader terms, and certainly at Coutts, we are led by the customer. So a huge part of our proposition is the service level, and that service level is human driven. And if our criteria clients choose to transact with us and engage with us face to face, then we will provide that service. But I think it's maybe in some ways about almost training up your client base and your audience to see the value of using digital channels, where in fact the value is over and above what you would get with a face-to-face engagement. So just as an example, one of the busiest times of year for private bankers and wealth managers will be just before the end of the tax year. And calls go out to clients, meetings are put in because maybe a client hasn't used their £20,000 ISA allowance for the year. And whilst it's our fiduciary responsibility to make clients aware of this and help them use that limit, it's not in the grand scheme of things a big ticket item. So in that sense, building out the capability to say to an individual, well, here's an automated notification with regards to your ISA status, and build a click here to top up your investment account. That is a smooth, easy transaction, which is actually better than having to take the time for a face-to-face conversation or phone call. So I think it's about picking the right moments to effectively introduce digitalized services to an audience used to face-to-face interactions.
Yep, some good points there. Anna, your company is based on just providing digital. So do you ever get involved in, you must get involved in discussions with your clients about how they integrate your digital delivery channel offering with the traditional methods. So what do you have to say on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think everybody here and also our clients will agree if I say that we are still talking about business of wealth management, which is still traditional and sensitive, and where wealthy clients will always appreciate and count on personal service, dedicated banker, or personalized solutions and offerings. Based on our experience, for most of our clients, the core of the business still lies in the personal service, but they are definitely looking for some support from digital tools. And I also believe that the actual face-to-face client advisor interaction is crucial here, but why not to digitalize what comes before and after that? So I mean, administration, onboarding, document completion, reporting, analytics. I think these areas can be easily digitalized and automated without affecting the quality and the added value of the personal interaction that should be in the end focused on people's needs and expectations. And I think that in the end there is no size that fits all. So the proportion between digital and personal service is very, very individual. And I think the key is simply to give clients both options, but simply optimize them in line with the business model a company has, the target client the company is servicing, or simply the expectations of the customers. So that's how I and our customers see that.
Mm-hmm. And Greg, we've already touched on what your firm does. It's these family offices, but I believe that even though most of your relationships with your clients are definitely phone calls, face-to-face, I believe you send out a newsletter by email every month. Is that right?
Yeah, it's more of a kind of market update. What's been going on in the market since the previous month.
And so these clients appreciate some kind of digital interaction.
There is always, I think, to echo what's been said, if we can do anything to speed up the access to information or make it more convenient to the families, regardless of size, I think that is a benefit to the family. But again, kind of echoing what's already been said, I think when it comes down to the advice, or the provision of advice and management, it's such a personal thing for our families that face-to-face, I think, is I can't see it being replaced by digitalisation anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the next question, which is the customer experience versus the advisor experience, because we're looking at this from both approaches, digitalisation, improving experience for the customer and for the advisor. Which do you think requires the greatest focus? And I think I'd like Anu to answer that question first.
I think it depends what you're trying to do, really. I guess the vanilla answer would be both of them. And if you are going for this omni-channel, let's sit down in a room together. It is effectively part of the same thing. Look, I think when we talk about the advisor experience, what we're talking about is access to real-time data. It's the ability to write a suitability letter or perform investment analysis very quickly, so you can get back to your client more quickly. So effectively, by improving the advisor experience, the access to tools, data, you are by proxy improving the client experience. I think there's also a big focus on advisor capacity and capability and utilization if your particular focus is, say, on your cost base and you're making attempts to reduce that. So I think it really depends what you're trying to do with your business strategy. I think you would like to say, okay, well, let's invest in both. Let's really digitize the heck out of everything and allow a client to do everything in the app, and let's give advisors the latest tools and technologies and an automated process so that their job is a cinch, so they can spend more time with their clients and more time prospecting. But I guess which of those two that you choose to invest in, notwithstanding the fact they are kind of related to each other, comes down to what your burning business platform is.
Yeah. Anna, what's your answer to this question?
I think that if we look at customer and advisor experience, like if we look at them together, we will see that they have many goals in common. So how to accelerate things, how to get rid of repetitive tasks, or how to provide seamless and efficient environment. But unfortunately or fortunately, in practice, it's the customer that always seems to come first, giving a company the upper hand and providing customers with all the fancy applications, nice features, and customer journeys. While on the other side of the relationship, we have advisor experience, which personally, in my opinion, in also looking at the projects we run with different financial institutions, seems to be forgotten and neglected. I give you one example from our playground. One of our clients used to operate 7 different systems to give simple investment advice. So imagine now 7 tools. I think there is no way for the advisor not to be lost in all of that at a meeting. And what's more, the client sees through that, because advisor experience and customer experience, they are interconnected. So this is neither good advisor nor good customer experience. And I think advisors need systems that will help them optimize and guide them through their work, reduce time spent on certain things, comply with regulations, also be more proactive towards their customers, which all in the end should lead to better customer experience as well. And also, in my opinion, unfortunately, improving advisory experience is usually much more demanding, time consuming, but also more complex in general. It's because there are many processes behind. There are a number of systems that advisors run every day, or simply counters like regulations financial institutions have to follow. But still, I believe that now it's time to focus on advisor experience, because in the end, it will pay off in better customer experience as well.
Thank you. We don't have that much time left, but I'd like to ask Maureen the same question, but just keep your answers brief, please. Customer experience versus advisor experience.
Yeah, I kind of agree with the other panelists, definitely based on target market segmentation. It comes down to kind of 3 things I see, and it's all foundational. It's data, which I think everybody spoke about, clean, organized, so you can execute your strategy. The other is enabling your ecosystem to be more API enabled, so you can integrate easily with your legacy applications. And finally, the journey mapping. And the journey mapping really kind of takes time to really flesh out and vet those touch points and moments of truth. I find many times, on the journey mapping, there is some reusability. between the customer and the advisor experience. So that investment in doing that is very important. So those would be the three areas of focus, and I think they're the same both for customer and advisor.
Yep. Okay, good. And Greg, I hope you don't mind if I skip past you, because
no, not so much.
I'd like to get on to the final there's two more key questions. This is one for each of you to answer probably differently. It's about problems. Problems always occur in business. A lot of people don't like to accept that, and they use the word issue as a euphemism. But problem is the word that journalists use. What problems, and I'd like Anna to answer this question first, what sort of problems can arise with a digital transformation strategy of this nature, and how do you avoid them? And when problems do occur, how do you solve them? Anna.
Well, the problem which I see is the insatiable appetite for digitization that leads to too many projects, too many initiatives that constitute equally huge risk. So what we see among our customers is the urge to cover more ground than possible within a single solution or a single project. But a jack of all trades is a master of none. So what we usually recommend in this particular context is to follow the MVP approach. So which maybe does not solve every single business need, but still solves most of key issues. I also think that we cannot forget about the fact that digital transformation means a makeover for the organization itself. So sometimes it's about changing advisors' mindset, the way how they work with their customers, or how customers are using certain features of our applications. So I think it's also crucial to involve any end users of the digital transformation project and let them contribute to the experience, to building the experience they are really looking for.
And Anna, what about you? What if the technology doesn't work as expected, or your clients don't find the mobile channel user-friendly? What sort of problems do you encounter?
Well, I think in those particular instances, I mean, I guess you fix it is the answer. But I think the point is that you don't allow yourself to get into that situation in the first place. So I think developing the capability for rapid fire test and learn, and before things even go live, test them in a very iterative way with your clients, as we're doing now. The first stage of testing isn't putting an iPhone in a client's hands and saying, what do you think of this? It's taking a panel of clients and giving them some hand-drawn sketches and saying, imagine you had this, how would you feel? What would you change? So I think, it's about taking preventative measures before you even get to that situation. And the MVP approach is one way, which is standard practice. But I think the other way is to think, what is the lowest fidelity prototype you can achieve, and start your client testing there, so that you don't hit those adoption issues later.
Mm-hmm. And Greg, you're at the beginning of a digitalization journey in terms of customer relationships with this new concept, which could be launched next year, aiming at individuals, wealthy individuals, mass affluent. Have you come across any problems yet, or what sort of problems do you anticipate could arise?
I guess this is not exclusive to a financial services business, but where any business goes through the process of digitalising, moving assets onto from paper onto systems, one of the biggest areas for us is looking at the kind of the data breach side of things and ensuring that there is governance and process procedure in place, which is strong and robust enough to protect the underlying clients. And speaking specifically about our business, having not been through that process, we obviously very, very aware of the risks, and having not done that before, ensuring that we get it right first time round is absolutely crucial. So to Anna's point, it's not a kind of a process that we rush in any way, and we need to get it right first time.
Yeah, and Maureen, how would you answer this question?
Yeah, I echo what the other panelists kind of said. I kind of see three things. I think firms are underestimating the effort for the governance and the internal program project management structure, from communication plans, internally, externally, transition plans, and everything around that. The other is really kind of going through research for the design, really kind of understanding the friction points, what good looks like. And there's a lot of different ways to achieve that through voice of the customer, workshops, interviews with advisor. But it's important to get that right. And if you don't get that right, then you will have a challenge throughout the rest of the project. And I agree with Anna. It is a cultural change for the organization as well. You need to take a look at your ops model and how you're going to now service the client holistically in this new paradigm.
Okay, thank you, Maureen. Well, we've almost run out of time, but I'd just like to ask each of you one final question and keep your answers succinct, about 30 seconds, please. It's all about the pros and cons of being an innovator or a follower. So when it comes to digitalising the customer and advisor experience, some wealth managers are innovators, others are followers. But there are advantages and disadvantages of both approaches. For example, first movers can grab people's imagination and a large slice of the market, while the laggards struggle to catch up and may never catch up. On the other hand, innovative companies can move too quickly and then crash and burn, while those following behind can learn from others' mistakes and leapfrog ahead. So start with you, Maureen. Is it better to be an innovator or a follower?
As being a former tech person myself, I tend to believe it's the innovator position is the more advantageous. Although that does come with some level of risk, but I think there's a greater risk of losing market share if not reacting timely. I think the difference here is, in order to do that, you've got to develop key partnerships with providers to help you with strategy, design, delivery. Okay. In order to do that, if you're going to go this journey alone and try to do it fast and by yourself and not leverage the best practices, experience, lesson learned, it really becomes a high risk proposition.
Okay, thank you. And Anu, what's your view? Very, very briefly, please.
I think banks and wealth managers need to be banks and wealth managers. So in those areas which pertain to our direct area of expertise and knowledge, such as the development of algorithms from automated advice, we should be at the forefront, innovating and leading the way there. I think for other elements of the digital transformation, maybe more on the channel side, the development of chatbots and so on and so forth. I think that's where it's okay to follow, or rather be led by individuals or companies who have expertise in those areas. So I think it's about picking your battlegrounds and focusing on what is your core.
Yeah, there's no simple answer. It's a bit of both, depending on the job in hand. And Greg, your view?
Quite a simple one for me. We're an investment firm, not a technology firm. So I guess the innovation that we can produce comes in the form of the product or the investments that we make on behalf of our clients, rather than how it's delivered. So
yeah, that makes sense. Anna.
I personally agree with Maureen, and I think it's quite risky to be a full-time innovator in this pretty conservative world. And I think that, in fact, smart following may be a better way than an innovation. And my recommendation would be just being an innovator where you feel strong enough for innovations, but follow the market in the areas where you don't feel you can make much difference. At least for now. And also, like as a software house, we also see many technologies trying to disrupt the wealth management of today. And we also realize that applying some of these technologies is not optimal for every kind of business within wealth management. And actually, this topic will be discussed during our next webinar. So I just wanted to take the chance to invite you for the upcoming webinar of this series.
Thank you, Anna. So it seems that the consensus is it's good to be an innovator if you choose the right battleground, and there's nothing wrong at all. In fact, it's very good to be a smart follower as well. So look, thank you, everybody. That's all we've got time for. It's been a fascinating discussion. This has been a live broadcast, but it's been recorded and it's going to be uploaded to the Ditto CoMark websites, and it's going to be available soon for you to listen to again if you wish and share with your colleagues. And as I mentioned at the outset, and as Anna's just mentioned, this has been the first in a mini series of 3 webinars on the digitalisation of wealth management. And there's going to be 2 more. The next one's going to be in January. We'll let you know the precise date as soon as it's been confirmed and how to dial in. So all that remains for me to do is to thank our listeners for listening and to thank our panelists for taking part. So thank you, Maureen, Anna, Anu, Greg, and Anna. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Cheers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.